Hi. About 30 years ago, a guy named John Naisbitt wrote a book called Megatrends, which was a bestseller 30 years ago. And the basis of the book was new technologies. Of course, at that time, the new technology was stuff like the Sony Walkman, which was considered new technology. Today is rather archaic, and high-8 tapes. One of the most interesting things in the book, he talked about something called high-tech, high-touch. High-tech being cassette tapes. But high-touch meant that as we got more of a technological society, as we got more separated from how society used to work, in other words, you did everything with your hands, we'd be more interested in things that were high-touch as a counterpoint. That actually proves to be true. One of the points Naisbitt made, and he predicted, was he said that as more and more people start to work on word processors, which was very big then, they'll start to write more and more things with fountain pens. Now, as it turns out, I have a love of fountain pens. I like this one in particular, but we don't write a lot of stuff with fountain pens, but we still have them. They're nice to have. Brett over here collects vinyl records, even though that's particularly archaic, but that's what's happened. Vinyl has actually become a pretty good business these days. For my birthday this year, Lisa bought me this Chinon Bellami HD-1 video camera, which is, has all the look of an 8mm film camera. And if you saw Steven Spielberg's movie Super 8, you know that those of us who grew up in the 50s grew up shooting what film we could with 8mm and Super 8 film, which didn't have any sound and also only shot 3 minutes worth of film each. That made it hard to be a filmmaker, which is why most people didn't end up like Steven Spielberg. But he was committed and he kept shooting 8mm film until he figured out how to do it. I gave up the first time because my old man yelled at me for using his film camera and made me put it back in the closet. Maybe I'd be in Hollywood today. In any event, this Bellami is made by Chinon, which is a Japanese company we don't hear too much about. And although it looks like an 8mm film camera and has the feel of an 8mm film camera, and it's really kind of cool to work with in terms of feel and texture, it actually shoots 1080 progressive high-definition video and does a pretty good job at it. Now, you may say to yourself, why would I want to use one of these instead of using an iPhone, which actually does exactly the same thing and also shoots 1080i or 1080p and does it a lot easier than dragging this thing around? Well, there are two reasons. First of all, this one has interchangeable lenses, which obviously my iPhone doesn't, and this actually is an f1.2 4mm lens, which is pretty good for this, and it has interchangeable other lenses, which I haven't bought yet, but I probably will end up doing, for zooming in and stuff like that. You can also change the depth of field on this, which you can't control in your typical camera. And if I could show you here, you can actually go from 1.2 to f16, so there's a controllable iris in it. But that's not the real reason for doing this. The real reason for doing this is the cool factor. I mean, let's be honest. There's no more fun than standing around and shooting like this. And what you see inside the viewfinder, which I can't show you here, but I will post as soon as I cut one of these things, it looks like an 8mm film. Now, it doesn't have those little lines and scratches and stuff like that, and a little circle in it and all the stuff that comes in between, if you're old enough to remember what that looks like. If you're not, we'll show it to you soon. Fortunately, there are about a half a dozen apps for your iPhone, or you can use on iMovie or Final Cut, that actually give it that effect. What this also records, which my 8mm film camera never did, is sound. It holds nicely in the palm of your hand. It runs on 2 AA batteries, which makes it pretty easy to do. You can also plug it into the wall if you want to do that. It's got wide and tight, just like a much larger video camera has. It's got all the bells and whistles, including a complete menu where you can affect everything pretty much like you can on a high-end camera. And it all sits in the palm of your hand, hangs on this dandy strap, and you can take it anywhere. What I like about it is it's fun. It's not the most reasonable thing to have in the world, but for shooting home movies or making little films or stuff like that, you can't beat it. I would recommend you go out and buy it. It's $8.95 retail. The problem is the only place you can buy it now is in Japan. How Lisa got it is beyond me, but she's very good at that kind of stuff, although I understand it is going to become available in the United States. Anyway, come Christmas, we're all going to go to England, and I'm going to shoot a couple of films with this thing, and I'll be posting them so you get a chance to see what it looks like. It's, for a guy who wrote iPhone Millionaire, it's kind of a dumb thing to be promoting. But this whole notion of high-tech, high-touch, and removing ourselves from the constraints of an entirely digital environment, I find particularly attractive. Take a look at it, and we'll show you what it looks like soon.